Hi, my name is Dear Tiagi, and in this video, due to popular demand, I'll be going over how to solve hard SAT vocab questions / wording context questions, and tips and strategies to solve these questions. So to start, before I go over these tips and strategies and problems, I first want to put into context how much of the test is actually these vocab questions. Because I think a lot of the time people are worrying about too much about these questions when they should be worrying, on the reading section at least, for other questions that they can easily improve on. I think vocab is one of the hardest things you can improve on the SAT. And again, I don't think it's really worth it for the amount of time you put in and the amount of gain you get from that. Because on the SAT, for Module 1, you're going to get anywhere between 5 to 6 vocab questions, and same thing for Module 2. And then for Module 1, these vocab questions, the first, I'd say maybe 2 to 4 are going to be easy. Maybe the next 1 to 3 might be medium / easy. So these ones aren't bad. These ones you can probably solve. And then Module 2, I think, usually you have 1 or 2 easy ones, easy / medium. And then you do get harder ones for sure. I'm not saying that they're easy. 3 to 4 hard ones probably. And so if you struggle with these 3 to 4 hard ones on this 54 question reading section, right, you're only losing out on 3 or 4 points. Maybe 5, let's say 5, right? So if you get everything else right, if you work on everything else, you'll still get a 49 out of 54, which translates roughly to maybe a lower 700s, upper mid 700s maybe. Depends on the test. But yeah, what I'm trying to show with this is that you really shouldn't be focusing on vocab questions unless you have a ton of time, because it's really hard to improve on these questions unless you don't know the words. If you know the words. But let's say you do want to improve on these vocab questions. You've mastered everything else. You've mastered the reading. You've mastered everything else, and you want to crack down on this. So first, let me explain the process you should be using when attacking these vocab questions. So the process is you should first read all of the passage, right? Make sure you actually understand what's happening. Then you have to think about what you would put in the blank. Okay? And by thinking about what you would put in the blank, you actively try to solve and you actively fire up your brain into seeing, okay, what words would fit, what words wouldn't fit, positive, negative, etc. Then once you think about what you would put, you compare two answers. And if you know the answers and you know, oh, this is the same thing I was going to put, great, you found your answer. But a lot of times, especially in harder questions, you might have no idea what words exactly mean. Okay? And this is going to happen quite a bit, probably 3 to 4 questions again. Maybe not quite a bit, but it's going to happen, right? And the step you have to take next is do not panic, okay? I know it's sometimes hard because you see a question like, oh, I don't know how to solve this, what do I do? Don't panic, and there are some tricks you can try to employ to find the answer. And these tricks involve comparing the answers to each other. Instead of looking at what the answer is, because you don't know what the words mean, you have to try to compare the answers to each other. So one way you can do this is by doing this trick. You might have seen it called positive negative. And so basically how this works is you first identify if you need a positive or negative word in the blank. Then you see, okay, does this word sound positive? Does it sound negative? And usually what happens is, okay, you have 3 negatives, 1 positive. The answer has to be that positive. Or this is the only one that seems positive, and my answer choice should be positive. Therefore, the answer is this one. Another trick you can use is you can learn roots, okay? So if you learn the roots, instead of having to memorize, thousands of words, right? Because English is a huge language. You can memorize the roots, and by memorizing the roots, you can make a good guess on what the words mean. So what I recommend you not do not study vocab lists. Okay? Don't study these. I don't think they're that helpful, honestly, because, you can study them, but you're not going to memorize every word on the test. There's no way you'll get every word. I think it's helpful if you really struggle with vocab, if you don't know the majority of the words, maybe study vocab lists. I'll have them in the description below. But again, I think if you're at the higher level and you solve these hard problems, it's just a waste of time studying vocab lists because you're not going to be able to find like every vocab question. You're not going to be able to memorize every word. So at that point, don't study vocab lists. Instead, again, study the roots. Okay? If you study the roots, then you'll be able to solve any problem because you'll know, okay, this is what the word sounds like, this is what I need, and you can attack it from there. And also, if you want to acquire a stronger vocab, again, naturally, I think is the best way. And what does naturally mean? Naturally means reading more. Read books, read the news. You can read the news every day. Just like on the toilet, you can do that anywhere, reading the news. Reading is good. And, doing vocab problems is also good just to, improve your vocabulary. If you don't know what a word means, search it up, add it to like a list, add it to a journal, and just like keep adding to your vocab list naturally. And again, do not study vocab lists unless you like have no vocab, but usually you should have some amount of vocab. Okay, so let's try out some hard SAT vocab questions and using these tricks and just like the process. Again, these questions, I know they're blurry for you guys, will be in the description below. So just read it in the PDF below. Okay, so rejecting the premise that the literary magazine Ebony, and Topaz should present a unified vision of Black American identity, editor Charles S. Johnson fostered his contributors' diverse perspectives by promoting their authorial autonomy. Johnson's self-effacement diverged from the editorial stances of Webb Du Bois and Alan Locke, whose decisions for their publications were more blank. And we have these 4 words that seem a little difficult. So first, let's try to identify, okay, what word would I place here? And so the passage is saying that this guy rejected the premise that it should present a unified vision. So Johnson, what he did is he made his journal promote diverse perspectives by using authorial autonomy. So he made people autonomous, and he allowed people to work by themselves. So by themselves, autonomously. And then this way he worked, Johnson's way, diverged, so it's different, diverged different, from Webb Du Bois and Alan Locke, whose decisions for their publications were more blank. So we want to contrast a word that contrasts with autonomous, so different, or opposite, I mean, from autonomous. So an example could be maybe controlling, authoritative, right? So we'll just say controlling, right? So something like controlling. So controlling is a kind of, I think, like negative word, right? If you're controlling something, you're like really not doing a good thing with it. So it's like kind of negative, right? Proficient. Proficient, again, if you should know what proficient means, if you don't know what it means, it kind of sounds positive, right? Proficient, pro, good, right? So maybe not proficient. That sounds kind of positive. So positive. Dogmatic. So dogmatic, where have I heard dogmatic? Dog. That doesn't really help though. Dogma, you might have known that. Dogma is like something religious, right? The church is like controlling, dogma, mind control stuff, maybe. That kind of sounds negative, I think. Dogma, right? Sounds like bad. Ambiguous, okay. I know ambivalent means, neutrally emotion. So ambiguous, okay, I'm thinking maybe neutral, amphibian, but I'm guessing like neutral, okay? So I'll say neutral here. And unpretentious. So pretentious is like really stuck up. Pretentious is like, I don't know, like bad, right? Being pretentious, oh, you're pretentious, you're bad. So unpretentious, I'm guessing, means like something positive maybe, because pretentious is bad, must be positive. So even if I don't know what the words mean, I'm like, okay, this can't be proficient, it can't be unpretentious. Ambiguous is a kind of really neutral, and I don't think we need a neutral word. I think we need a word that's really negative and controlling. So I'm going to guess the answer is B. And based on my trick, positive, negative, the answer is in fact B. Dogmatic means controlling, which is exactly what we guessed the word had to mean. So again, even if you don't know what the word means, if you kind of like just look at the words, think of other words that kind of look like that word if you don't know the roots. If you know the roots, this might be an easy question. But if you don't know the roots, then try to guess, like, okay, this looks like this word means this, maybe this word means that, positive, negative, etc. Okay, so try another one. In studying the use of external stimuli to reduce the itching sensation caused by an allergic histamine response, Lewis Ward and colleagues found that while harmless applications of vibration and warming can produce a temporary distraction, such blank stimuli actually offer less relief than a stimulus that seems less benign, like a mild electric shock. And then, fill in the blank. Okay, so what do we want in this part? So it says that the Lewis and Ward found that while using harmless applications, so harmless things like vibration / warming, I totally spelled vibration wrong, vibration or warming provides a temporary distraction, such blank. So we want an adjectives that describes this harmlessness. Such blank stimuli actually offer less relief than a stimulus that seems less benign. So benign, like a mild electric shock. So electric shock, it's obviously more dangerous, right? Less harmless, unharmless, I guess, than a vibration. So we can assume that the adjective we want to use here, such blank, like it wants to be like harmless, it should be like safe. Such safe stimuli actually offer less relief than a stimulus that seems less benign. I'm guessing means, harmless or safe, because they're comparing mild electric shock to a vibration or warming. So we want a word that shows that this is more safe than this. So safe, when I think of safe, I think of like positive, right? And then looking at the words, deceptive. Deceptive sounds kind of negative, right? I know what deceptive means. It means to like deceive or deceit, right? That's what I've heard it from. So I'm guessing it's probably not A, sounds kind of negative. B, innocuous. Innocuous, that kind of sounds like hidden, kind of sounds like innocent, right? Innocuous, INNO, innocent. So maybe positive. I'll say positive question mark, maybe. Novel. Okay, novel I know means like a book, right? But it also means like new, right? Like out of the ordinary, new, novel. And here, it's not having vibration or warming is not new compared to an electric shock, so that doesn't really make sense. And again, we're not talking about like time, so saying something's new doesn't really make sense. So it's not novel. And then impractical. Practical is a good thing, right? Practical, I'm like, oh, I'm practical. Impractical must be a bad thing then. So negative. And from this, I'm like, okay, the answer should be B. We want a positive word that's like safe and good. And B is like the only ones for like safe and good. And the answer is in fact B. Innocuous means like innocent or like harmless, which is what we wanted. So those were some problems, and those were my tips and strategies for SAT vocab / word in context questions. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye.